How to make sure your message gets ignored. So I was listening to a topic by, or a conversation, a podcast basically, with Dr. Tali Shalat on the Diary of a CEO. And they were discussing the fact that when two people agree on something, and then their brains essentially kind of light up because they've done scans while people are discussing an issue or coming to an agreement on something. And so when you and another person agree, or when someone says something to you that you agree with, your brain has a positive response, activity, lights up, whatever. On the contrary, when you hear something you do not agree with, and then you basically essentially shut down. So you close your brain, you stop thinking, essentially. Which has some remarkable implications. So when it comes to persuasion, or if you want to, discuss, if you want to get someone to see something from your vantage point, the obvious takeaway from this is you need to, at least initially, focus on things that the person agrees with. There was an interesting thing that they did with childhood vaccines. And, of course, many people have reservations about childhood vaccines because of the potential link with autism. And in the study they found, or in the technique that these scientists came up with, whatever it was, they had the person trying to, persuade the parents to allow the vaccine, rather than saying, no, there's no autism link, here's the facts and figures, blah, blah, blah. Instead, they just left all that. They didn't mention it at all. And they just talked about how that, these vaccines help prevent deadly disease, which was something that a lot of these parents actually did agree with. They weren't disagreeing that vaccines might help prevent deadly diseases. They were just concerned about the autism link. And so when the practitioners focused on the common ground, and then I think they had about 3 times more people, parents, be on board with going ahead administering the vaccine. And so it was just fascinating. Now, by the way, not a big fan of, or let's just say I've got at least a healthy dose of skepticism about vaccines. But it was fascinating how the approach for better effectiveness there was not focusing on removing the disagreement. It was to focus on the common ground that you had. And of course, because I'm in marketing, I think about this from a marketing standpoint. I'm like, so better not to try to be persuading people who don't agree with me in marketing copy. Better to focus on things that we can agree on, and maybe let some of the objections take care of themselves, perhaps. I'm not sure. It's also interesting from a sales context. And I think really smart salespeople do this kind of naturally, probably, or maybe through training. But I think sometimes when people raise objections, they will just steer the skilled salesperson will steer the conversation back into the things that you do agree on. So let's say I'm buying a high-ticket training offer from you, or a coaching or something like that, and maybe I raise an objection. Maybe instead of spending a lot of time trying to sort of overturn my objection, maybe you bring me back to, what's the overall goal here? Do we agree on the fundamental, value proposition here? I'm not sure how that works. I know that I'm sure there's times when you have to address actual objections from people, but it's just interesting, it has very practical ramifications, because there's conflict all the time. People have disagreements all the time. And so when you start out the conversation essentially saying you're wrong, what you've done is you've shut down the other person's brain. And it's like, you're not going to get through to someone when they're already sure that you're wrong. Like there's not going to be a productive conversation. There's not going to be a persuasion happening in that context. So instead, what's the common ground you do have? And can you start there? And then maybe once that's established, maybe you can find a way to navigate some of the trickier bits. So anyway, what have you found? How do you most effectively persuade people that you disagree with? Or do you even try?